Hi everyone. Today what I wanted to do, I wanted to make a video and sort of talk about the three stages of recovery. For me, this is the way I conceptualize it, right? Um, Addiction itself is unique to the person who's experiencing it, right? I've never met two people, I've never worked with two people with addiction who experience it in the exact same ways or for the exact same reasons, right? And if you ask, you could get 100 people who have experienced addiction and ask them what is addiction, and they'll answer differently because they'll answer their experience of addiction, right? So this is the way I conceptualize it, and I kind of incorporate this in my work as well. It helps to sort of break things down, yeah, and to unpack them separately, yeah, in my mind anyway. And this might be helpful for you as well. I think it will, right? So for me, right, so have a look at this image, okay? So for me, this is how I conceptualize recovery from addiction, okay? You've got abstinence, you've got recovery, and you've got sobriety. Okay, sobriety is where we want to reach, right? As soon as you quit an addiction, you can't say that you're in sobriety because you're not, because sobriety is something else. Yeah, abstinence is the first stage of sobriety. Yeah, and abstinence is the most traumatic stage. This is when we first quit. Yeah, this is when we first quit, and because our brain is so wired for that substance or for that behavior, yeah, it tends to scream out for it, and we feel that in our mind, we feel that in our bodies. Yeah, so it's the most traumatic time. You could get insomnia from it. You're edgy, you're a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more confrontational. Yeah, this is because of that. Now, as you can see in the image, abstinence overlaps with recovery a little bit. And what I tend to find is in that little space there, you've got a little bit of both happening, right? And what tends to happen in that little space there is the moment of clarity. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the moment of clarity before. When I first heard of it, I thought it sounded really nice and really positive, right? And I was kind of looking forward to experiencing that. But what the moment of clarity really is, as nice as it sounds, is a moment of clarity of how fucked up your life is because of addiction, right? This is what happened to me, and this is what happened to most people. Now, why it happens in that little space, for example, yeah, is because you're kind of moving into recovery now. The trauma of abstinence is beginning to fade. You're beginning to regain your body and your mind, yeah. So you're getting more clarity of the world, yeah, of what's going on around you. Now, when you get that kind of clarity, the first thing that you're going to look at is your own life, right? What has addiction done to my life? And that bit's quite scary, because for me, I what I learned from it is that I lost a decade of my life. Yeah, my 20s, I smoked away. I smoked it away. In my late 20s, I found harder drugs, and I was just like high throughout the whole of my 20s, right? Don't get me wrong, like I experienced stuff. I laughed. I did some things that not a lot of people are lucky enough to experience. Yeah. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of great experiences. I saw some money, but mainly I kind of jumped around from job to job, and I was always high. Yeah. So being high was a coping mechanism for everything. Okay, whether I was in a good mood, whether I was in a bad mood, whether I wanted to celebrate, whether I wanted to mourn, yeah, whether I was walking to the shop, if I was going to sister's house for dinner, oh, might as well pick up a gram, yeah. So everything was done with that. So there was never no clarity of the mind. So my moment of clarity was that I'd lost a decade of my life, yeah. I was in a lot of debt, yeah. I had very strained relationships with those people who are closest to me, the people who love me the most. Yeah, and I had, when I look back, I had been very selfish towards them. Yeah. You know, they talk about the acquired narcissist personality in addicts. I had that. Yeah, and that was a massive realization for me. Yeah, because when you are in active addiction, you know, you put in the addiction first, and you kind of put in your active addiction social circle first as well, because that's where the goods are. That's your company. Yeah. So, you know, our loved ones suffer from that. So that's another thing that I realized. And professionally, I was in an absolute rut. You know, I was jumping from job to job. You know, I never had anything stable. Any job that I went to, I did quite well. Yeah. But I was never happy, because I wasn't fulfilling my own dreams, you know. So that's kind of abstinence. And then there's your little gap there of moment of clarity. Yeah. And then once you realize that, you get that moment of clarity. Yeah. Some people fall back into addiction because it's a lot to handle. It's a lot to look at. Me, I was in thousands of pounds worth of debt. Yeah. And it seemed like as soon as I lifted my head out of the ground, the first people to see me were the debt collectors. Right. And that's what happened. And they came for me. So, you know, I had two options. One was to work and pay off those debts, and another one was just to jump back into my comfort zone of active addiction. Yeah, have no money, because they used to call me when I was an addict as well, when I was in active addiction, and they say, oh, we're coming. I say, listen, if you take clothes, then come, because that's all I've got. And they wouldn't come, right? But, you know, when I kind of came out of it and I took my head out of the ground, I started working again, and I thought, I need to save some money. I wasn't spending all my money on drugs and nights out. So I was, you know, I found that I could keep money even though the wage I was on wasn't great. So when they came, there was a big decision to make, you know, pay the debt or don't. And I decided to pay it. Yeah. Paying it, yeah, took me about a year, yeah, or over a year. And for that year, I didn't have any money. I didn't have no money, because I was giving it all to them. I was giving them about £500-600 a month, yeah, to pay off these debts. And, you know, this was when I was in the recovery period. So I was doing that. And because I'd stopped years of substance abuse, and I started sort of coming back to myself, right, and being left without the comfort blanket of active addiction of my substances, left me naked. Yeah. So there was a lot to work on, you know. From a young teenager, my coping mechanism was cannabis. Yeah. And because of that, because I started so young and it became my coping mechanism for everything, there were parts of me that just didn't develop. They didn't develop normally. Yeah. You know, coping, that's if cannabis is a coping strategy for joy, if it's a coping strategy for sadness, if it's, you know, something you do when you're having fun, something you do when you're bored, when you're stressed, when you're walking to the shop, if you have a confrontation with someone, you know, you're high and you're like, hey man, you know, I'm not into that. Or, you know, you might fight them, yeah, because you're high. You might get hyped. Yeah. So when you come out of that, you've got no normal coping strategies for these things. So, you know, you've got a period of time as well where you're kind of developing and you're becoming an adult again. Yeah, and I think this is where the saying that addicts are adult children comes from, because if you start taking a substance so young and it's your coping mechanism, you don't develop into a normal adult. So there was a lot of that going on, and there was some therapy involved in there as well, because you come to realize that addiction is fulfilling a need for you. Yeah, it's filling a void. Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, it's different for everyone. Yeah, it could be childhood trauma, it could be something else, it could be stress, it could be something else. Yeah, I won't talk about that too much, because, you know, that's a topic we can do a deep dive into as well. So yeah, so there was some therapy involved in that, some coaching involved in that, and in that recovery process as well. You know, I had to look at my career, yeah, my professional life, and saw that that was in a complete rut. So I had to decide what I wanted to do with that, you know, and then I started moving towards that. Yeah. So there was a lot of work going on me, personal development going on, but I might have not even felt that during recovery because it was so hard. Yeah. I'm working a full-time job. I'm giving all my money to my debts. I'm studying at the same time. Yeah. So I'm working during the day. I've got no money for it because I'm paying off debts, and in the evenings I'm studying, yeah. On the weekends I'm going to school, yeah. So there was a lot of that going. So it was just tiring and it was stressful, right? But then I kind of came into this area now between recovery and sobriety, right? Into that little gap where they're joined, where they overlap. And for me, that little area, what happened there is actually when I'd finished paying off my debts. And that was such a load off my shoulders. And I was near the end of my studies as well, right? After a couple of years, or I was well into my studies and I was enjoying what I was studying. I was studying cognitive hypnotherapy. And when those debts finished, you know, I was able to take, you know, this deep, free breath. And when I was able to do that, it was like I'd been hiking up a mountain, and you know, it was such a difficult mountain that all I could do was just look down one step after the other so I don't fall off the mountain, right? So I was just concentrating on each step. And for a moment it was like I'd stopped to rest, and I lifted my head and I looked back and just saw the most amazing view, and had realized how far I'd climbed. You know, I was debt free. I didn't have no money, but I was debt free. I was at square one. Yeah. And you know, and I was well into this course that I was really loving. I was really enjoying studying cognitive hypnotherapy. And I'd come to realize as well that I'm not thinking about drugs anymore. I'm not, you know, I'm hardly thinking about drugs. I still had triggers. There were still triggers, but they were just bouncing off me, you know. And you know, I'd realized I didn't want drugs anymore. I'd learned what I had to learn about the friends that I kept while I was in active addiction, right? And how little support I kind of saw from them, and how quick they were to drag me back, yeah, if I was that way inclined, which I wasn't. Yeah, but there were times, there was once or twice when it happened, when I relapsed. Yeah, so I'm here now and I've realized, and I found a new sort of, a new social circle who are more into what I was into then, you know, studying cognitive hypnotherapy, friends that I'm still in touch with. They're like family to me. And yeah, and I was just like, you know, wow, life is happening. It's happening. I'm making it. And, you know, I'm learning here as well. I'm thinking, like, bloody hell, I'm an able person. I'm an able person. I can actually do this. I can actually get through this, right? My relationship with my loved ones, with my sister, with my parents, was the best it's ever been, right? Over that year or 2 years, what had happened is they'd begun to gain trust for me again, which they didn't have for a very long time. They began to realize that I was sincere, yeah, that I meant it. Now, when we first quit, you know, for a while they still don't trust us. They might not have faith in us, you know, because they've kind of heard it all before, they've seen it all before, right? So we have to allow that time for them. How we need them to be patient with us, we need to be patient with them as well. But where I've come to a stage now where they were actually genuinely proud of me, right? And they actually genuinely trusted me. And, you know, my dad was talking about, you know, important family matters with me that he wouldn't talk about before, you know, because he trusted my opinion. So that was amazing. And then, you know, coming out of that and then into sobriety, what I found is once I stepped into sobriety, that drugs, alcohol, things like that, even gambling, which I never really had a problem with, I used to enjoy, yeah. But when I came into sobriety, I didn't even have an interest in that. I never had a massive problem with alcohol, although I did have a small problem with it at one point, but it wasn't something that became anything, yeah. You know, I found that, you know, I'd drink, you know, 2 beers or 1 beer, and as soon as I could feel that that buzz kicking in, yeah, I felt like my mind was poisoned, my body was poisoned. It didn't feel like a buzz. It felt like I'd taken a substance which was poisoning my body and made me feel a different way, and I didn't like that, right? Drugs, no way, right? People would take it in front of me and I wouldn't struggle to say no at all, right? It's something that I do not want anymore, right? So I, one, my mind and body back from addiction in sobriety. Yeah, now for me, sobriety, I hope that it's a lifelong journey, right? I'm still in sobriety. I wouldn't call myself an addict anymore. I wouldn't say that. I'm still an addict in recovery. I wouldn't say that. I'm sober. I'm not giving myself no labels. But sobriety is something that I just hope never finishes, because it's a constant journey of looking within, yeah, and just improving yourself. It's a continuous journey of personal development and growth, and I love it. So that's sobriety. There's always still things to look at. You know, I still from time to time get therapy because I love it. You know, you've got a professional there helping you unpack your thoughts, unpack your beliefs, you know, helping you move beyond your weaknesses to continue moving outside of your comfort zone. Yeah, because comfort zones, for me, you know, addiction was a comfort zone for me. Yeah, it was somewhere that I stayed from fear of succeeding, or just, you know, a negative place. Yeah, so I constantly like to grow, constantly like to grow. Yeah, so that's it. I think I've covered everything. But yeah, sobriety is where we want to get. You know, it's a higher frequency, it's a higher state of mind. It's where, you know, self-awareness lives, and yeah, and all that good stuff. I hope this has cleared that up. And you know, if you can relate to it, drop a comment. If you like this video, you know, subscribe, hit the bell as well, and I'll hopefully be putting on more videos. What I'm hoping to do is, you know, share as much knowledge as I've got with you guys, and put it into, you know, put things into context, basically, you know, because that was a massive part of recovery for me, is knowing what was actually going on with me. Yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one. Peace.